Vitek here from Wani, and with us today we have one and only Mike Portnoy. How you doing, brother?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Mike. Now, the Similitude of a Dream or Similitude of a Dream coming up in next few weeks. How you feeling about this weight game?
That's right. Actually, I found this out. It's the similitude of a dream. I never even knew the word similitude, and we had to look it up on YouTube to see how to pronounce it. I wasn't sure if it was similitude or whatever, but it's actually the similitude. So it's a brand new vocabulary that I'm very excited about.
That's good to hear. Now, you guys have already unleashed the new video, So Far Gone, City of Destruction, Overture. So 4 tracks are already out. How has been the response so far from your fans?
The response has been really amazing, and we actually today, as you said, we released our third video today, and we have 2 more waiting in the wings. So we're going to release them every Friday up until November 11th, and the response has been great. But I should probably point out that being it is a concept album. It really is all about hearing the whole thing and the whole experience. I think all of these songs we're releasing and all these videos we're releasing are good kind of samples or sneak previews, but it's like, I just posted this online today, you really wouldn't be able to judge Tommy by just hearing Pinball Wizard, or you wouldn't be able to judge The Wall just from hearing like Another Brick in the Wall. I think, they're great songs, but I think in the case of this album, it's about the entire experience. And I think that's when people will really appreciate what this album has to offer, when they hear the whole thing from start to finish.
Absolutely right. I had a chat with Neal a couple of weeks ago, and he did tell me that even though you have considered this as the landmark album of your career, Neal considers this as, one of his children. I mean, it's very difficult for him to compare it with the other music. But I gotta ask you, you've been living with it, you've been breathing with it for a while now. Is the thought still the same that this is your landmark album of your career?
I do agree with Neal that all your albums are indeed like your children. I know it's a cliche to say that, but it really is the truth when you're an artist. And I am proud of each and every album I've made, both with and without Neal. But I think for me, I have a real soft spot for concept albums. All of my favorite albums that I've made are my concept albums, like Scenes from Memory with Dream Theater, or The Whirlwind with Transatlantic, or all of Neal's previous concept albums like Sola and Question Mark and Testimony. So that's my favorite type of album. So when I kind of have to pick a desert island disc, even for other bands, I already mentioned Tommy and The Wall, and those are good examples of favorite albums of mine. So I think I have a real soft spot for this album because it's a concept album, because it's a double album, which is also very, very special and something that doesn't happen often in a career. So, once you have all of those elements coming together, a double album, a concept album, I think it's really kind of the best representation of what, me and Neal have to offer. It's kind of like the biggest bang for your buck, all in one package.
True, and now this has a very classic Neal Morse sound, and obviously Eric and Bill have contributed on this record, also on the Grand Experiment. So how was their contribution on this? Obviously you are the arranger, Neal writes the most of it. So on this record, did it change, or it's the same?
Well, I can't stress enough how much having Bill and Eric has really changed the dynamic and the chemistry that Neal and I, as well as Randy, have had in the past. In terms of collaboration, I almost thought the Experiment had more collaboration, and this time around it was a little more, like Neal had this bit or Bill had that bit, and we kind of arranged it together because it was such a monumental concept. True. But, I really think that Eric and Bill's contributions take this music to a whole new level. And I think another key element is splitting up the lead vocals. You know, Bill and Eric are both singing a lot of lead vocals. I'm singing a lot as well. So I've also really always loved bands that have multiple singers. And, you know, Pink Floyd had Roger, Dave, and Rick singing. And Kiss had all four members singing. And the Beatles had all four members singing. And Queen, you know. I've always loved bands that had that. And I think that's now one of the greatest assets of this band is, you know, everybody's vocal contributions, especially when you're doing a concept album and you could really kind of introduce a lot of different characters and things like that.
Absolutely. Now, talking about your vocals, man, what have you done on this record? The song Confrontation, my goodness. I mean, all this while, I love your vocals on every album you've done in your career, but this album shines right up there. Like, you know, the way you're expressing it, wonderful. You know, great to see you doing that, and, you know, it's great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, look, the reality is I'm not a singer. I'm a drummer that sings, and there's a big difference. Well, unless you're Phil Collins or, you know, Don Henley, of course. But in my case, you know, I think I'm adding just another, you know, another character. I don't mean literally a character. I mean just more like in terms of, you know, the personality involved. And I've always placed a high priority on character, whether it be you know, whether you're a drummer or even a singer. Right. I'm not necessarily somebody that loves a great singer because they're technically perfect. You know, I love Roger Waters, and Roger Waters is not a great singer technically. You know, Ace Frehley isn't a great singer technically, but what they bring to their bands is certain personality and character, and to me that goes a long way. You know, it's way more important than perfection.
True. And what have you done on this record in terms of drumming, Mike? The last couple of sections, you know, related to the battle. What have you done there? It's really heavy. Reminded me of the Dark Eternal Night, you know, kind of a vibe from the Systematic Chaos. This album in general is very heavy, very darker than what Neal generally does, and it's really cool to see that, you know, that you're kind of expressing your extreme side. So what are you going to say about the drumming, the extreme side of it on this record?
Yeah. Yeah, the battle in particular is one of the craziest, most progressive pieces that I've ever done. It's definitely up there with some of the more technical things that I've done with Dream Theater. And actually, I got to give Neal all the credit for the battle. He brought that in as a demo with just piano. So when he presented it, it was this incredibly complex piano piece. It almost sounded like Gershwin on acid, you know, and we just heard this crazy piano thing, and it's like, well, what the hell are we going to do to this? So basically, he set me up with the tracks, and I completely orchestrated it with drums and had added all these crazy drums, and then everybody else added their guitar, bass, and keyboards, you know, to that as well. So we orchestrated it as a band, but really it stemmed from something that Neal had written on the piano. And it really is one of the craziest, sickest pieces of music I've ever been a part of. I also should mention, I do agree, I think the Neal Morse band is in general heavier than the previous Neal Morse solo material. Right. I think a big part of that is because of Eric's guitar playing. I think that Eric really reminds me of John Petrucci at times. Right. You know, he's a very, very similar style. And once you add that kind of crunchy, heavy guitars into the mix and the riffing, I think Eric's addition into the Neal Morse band is helping bring the heaviness into this band and kind of starts to bring the Neal Morse band closer to Dream Theater territory than ever before.
Absolutely, man. That's really good to hear. Now, you have reached the pinnacle of the Neal Morse sound, as you mentioned. Now, you know, Neal said that there's a possibility of a sequel since he only did the first 80 pages of the book. So, if that happens in future, what challenge are you guys going to face? Because, like you said, it's chaotic. It's right up there, and to write a material equivalent to this is going to be very challenging. So, what's there in your mind in case there's something planned for future?
God, I don't know. Anytime I've made a landmark album, or at least what I consider a landmark album, the next time around, we kind of had to just try something completely different, because you can't really top it when you put this much energy and creativity into an album like this. So, after I made Scenes from a Memory, we went into a whole different direction with 6 Degrees, and after we made The Whirlwind, we kind of had to go into a new direction with Kaleidoscope. You can't. I don't know if I would want to follow this up with another double concept album. I think after you do something as exhausting as this, you need to kind of follow it up with something completely different. But who knows down the road? We'll see.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, Dream Theater released The Astonishing earlier this year, and now we have the Neal Morse coming up. So fans are obviously going to compare between these two albums because they are concept albums, and obviously, the Mike Portnoy tag is there. But as a listener, as a fan of both the bands in general, I gotta say that this one, the Similitude, is way beyond what Astonishing could possibly touch. And I want to know, were you worried, were you concerned about when you were writing this album that your fans are going to compare these two albums in general?
Wow. Well, thank you. I have to admit, I was really resistant to do a double album because I was afraid of the inevitable comparisons to Dream Theater's latest album. Once they put out a double concept album, I was really resistant and reluctant for us to do it. And I fought the guys hard in the studio while making this record, desperately trying to keep it to a single, just because I was, I could already picture the comparisons, and I just didn't want to go down that road, and I didn't want to be compared, and I didn't want anybody to think we were stealing the idea from them, which is obviously not the case. So I was really fighting those guys, but halfway through the record and the writing, we knew it had to be a double. I finally just gave up fighting and let the album be what it needed to be. And at first, I was so scared and hesitant of the comparisons, but now I kind of I kind of want it to be compared because I'm so proud of it. And it's like I really feel we came up with such a special album that. I no longer really worry about that comparison. I think what we came up with is absolutely the best of the best. So I'm proud of it and think it can stand up to anything.
True. Very well said. Now, Hello Kitty Drumkit. You did that, for a while. So are you going to take that on road?
Well, it's funny because after the Hello Kitty video blew up last year, and it went viral, and it was like all over the place. I ended up bringing a small Hello Kitty kit out on tour with the Winery Dogs, and would play it at special concerts during my drum solo. It's crazy how much that thing blew up. If I would have realized it at the time, I certainly would have tried to have been funnier. I just was being a spontaneous goofball, and next thing I knew, it had like 3 million hits, and it's like, no matter how many drum awards I've won or how many times I've been on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine, suddenly now all of those achievements are completely irrelevant. I'm now just going to be known as the Hello Kitty guy.
That's very well said, Mike. Now, your love for extreme metal has always been there. You love doing blast beats like we heard on Nightmare to Remember. It's still one of my favorites. So have you ever thought of doing any death metal project with any of your favorite musician, a project where people get to hear the death metal side of you, which I'm sure you're also interested in doing?
Well, I still am patiently waiting to do something with Mikael Akerfeldt. He and I have been good friends for a long time, and I would love to do something with him, and I would love to do something with him in the heavy vein. He's been kind of getting away from the heavy stuff with OPETH, so maybe one of these days, if he and I ever do get together, we can kind of get into the heavy stuff. But I guess the closest I've come is the Metal Allegiance album. I was able to do some really dark, heavy, fast, intense drumming on that album. So at the moment, that seems like that's the closest escape I have to that kind of music.
True. In fact, you were supposed to be part of the Mikael Akerfeldt and Steven Wilson Storm Corrosion project, but later on they just decided to do themselves.
Well, we were kind of, the three of us was kind of talking about it hypothetically. Mm-hmm. And then once word got out of that, people jumped to the conclusion that it was an actual real project that was being discussed. It was never a real concrete project. It was more just a hypothetical, hey, wouldn't it be cool to work together someday? And I know once those guys got together and began Storm Corrosion, it became obvious to those two guys that they were going in a much more acoustic direction, and they didn't really need a collaborator like myself. And they were kind of going in a different place than we would have gone if we went in together. So that still remains to be one project or one collaboration that I'm hoping to someday do.
That would be rad. Now, 12 Step Suite is going to be, happening next year on your birthday bash. You're doing a couple of shows at Prog Power as well. So, for your fans out there, who would be interested to see this in a DVD or maybe in person as well, what's the plan with that? Are you going to take that on road, or what are the ideas so far?
Well, to be honest, I'm excited to play the 12 Step Suite at my birthday concert, but to be honest, that's just going to be one element of my birthday concert on Cruise to the Edge. The things that I have in store for that particular concert are going to be very, very special, and it's more than just the 12-step suite. As people know, and as I've announced, that's a concert that's going to concentrate on my entire career. It's a career retrospective of the last 30 years. So the 12-step suite is just a small piece of that bigger picture. That particular show is really going to be epic. It's going to probably be the one of the most unique and special shows of my career. Later in the year, I'm going to go out and do some things with Shattered Fortress, just doing the 12-step suite. But the 50th birthday concert on Cruise to the Edge is going to be so much more.
Awesome. That's really good.
In answer to your question, I am planning on filming and recording it, but whether or not I release it will obviously depend on how everything goes and, how the footage comes out. And if anything, I'm trying to encourage people to be there in person because it's going to be that special that, I want to share this moment and my 50th birthday with my friends and family and fans, in person.
Oh, that's going to be epic. Now, a couple of days ago, I did an interview with Scott Ian of Anthrax where he mentioned that these reunion tours which have been happening lately from last couple of years are purely out of money basis instead of just, for the sake of, being on tour. So what's your take on it? I mean, you've been part of Twisted Sister Final Tour, you've headlined festivals, and Twisted Sister have been really great, and they haven't laid down any rules. They're doing it for the fans, and they're closing the chapters. So if I would have to ask you, is it actually for the money that the bands are touring so-called reunion tours or the final tours, or is it just, just to please the fans?
Well, it's different for different bands and different people. I think in Twisted's case, they are probably more concerned with the legacy of the band than they are with the money. I think if that wasn't the case, then they wouldn't be quitting. Right now they're playing the biggest shows of their careers. They're headlining festivals that Metallica and Black Sabbath are headlining on the previous nights, and headlining side by side with bands of that level. So, obviously, for them to come out on top proves that it's more about doing it for the legacy than the money. If they were doing it for the money, they'd probably go for another 5 or 10 years and strike while the iron is hot.
True.
But I know different bands have different motivations. There's a lot of bands that have claimed to do farewell tours, and here they are, still doing it years later. I remember seeing the Who's farewell tour in 1982. That's 35 years ago. I saw their farewell tour, and now they're still touring. And I'm not taking a jab at them, but it just goes to show that there's a lot of bands that kind of say they're going to quit, but then they keep going because the money is so good. And personally, I've never been motivated by money. I've never made a single career or musical decision based on money.
Right.
My personal decisions and everything I've done in my career are completely based on what interests me on a creative level, and what will fulfill me on a musical level.
Very well said, Mike. Mike, thanks again, brother. Always a good time having a chat with you. I feel the time flies every time we have a chat. So thank you so much once again for doing the interview. I wish you good luck with the release and the tour. Obviously, we will catch the band on tour in North America. So I look forward to it, and you have a wonderful day ahead. Take care of yourself, my friend.
Well, I would love that. Thank you very much.